Welcome, guys. So my name is Eddie. Once again, Ayade Adebite. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. Today I will be talking on driving analytics with open source, leveraging Airbyte, DBT, Airflow, and of course Metabase for the business intelligence side. So what am I generally? I'm doing data stuff around the globe. I'm a data analytics mentor and tutor with Career Foundry. I'm passionate about data quality because we are seeing a lot of organizations venturing into AI, and without quality data, it's more or less garbage in and garbage out. And I'm the founder of Behind the Data, where we are doing amazing data stuff. And one of the amazing data stuff that we are doing at Behind the Data is the newsletter, where we share stories of experts in the data space and their growth. So if you're interested in joining or in sharing your story with us, please scan the QR code and you'll get the necessary information that's needed. So without further ado, let's get into it. So why driving analytics with open source? So my problem when I was with Wirepeak was that I have a lot of problem that I'm dealing with in terms of data. So what we actually do is we write different SQL query, export the data out, take it to Google Sheets, and start doing visualizations in it, right? So it's not just my team, that's what every other team members or department or unit per se are actually doing. So we are more or less like Batman without the cool gadgets, right? So every now and then it's always one problem from the other. And the period or the duration that we're meant to be giving insights that is going to help business makes informed decision. We are using that to either be cleaning data or whatnot. But all of these are still like personal problem to the data analyst that is attached to each business unit until when it becomes our problem. So how did it become our problem? During one of our end of the month stakeholders meeting, I was presenting an overall performance, and I remember calling a certain figure as the total sales that we made from Shopify. And the finance team, they just stopped me amid my presentation and said, that's not correct. And that's basically just shut everybody off. Like, what is happening? Why would, out of 10 to 20 people in a meeting, why would one person says this is not correct? Then it goes to, I have a different data. I have access to all of the data that is available. The finance team lead only have access to their data. So which means that they don't have access to all the information. So the information that the finance team lead has compiled is not as updated as the one that I have. And that's when it became our problem. So why this happened was because for me, I deal with basically the data from the streaming platforms like Apple Music, Deezer, Spotify, and the rest. And I also deal with book sales, which we are picking from Shopify, from Amazon, and our local retailers. Why for the finance, they're only dealing with the local retailers. It's another department or unit per se that is dealing with Shopify data and the rest. So we have the data scattered across different organizations, and we are not even that big. And aside that, we are always writing filters with our queries. A typical example would be there was a scenario where when you sign up, you're only meant to get 5 free stories to read. And because proper implementation was not in place, some people were able to bypass that. And we have people reading up to 20 stories for free, whereas they're meant to have just 5 free stories for free. Now, it is during analysis or answering a business question that I started finding out these things, right? So, again, what we do is export data from MySQL, take it to Google Sheet, start making charts, and then pasting the charts into Google Slides. So it's a lot of manual process. And then confirming numbers also, it's now become a thing of the finance department will need to reach out to the marketing to confirm their final market spend. Whereas when we can actually have all the data in one place and everybody can pick whatever it is that they want. Now, what was the turning point for us? Like I mentioned earlier, the driver or the turning point for us would be the finance team lead saying the figure I was presenting was wrong. Whereas she was the one that was wrong because she did not have access to all the required data. Now, after realizing this, I was the only data person. So it's so more or less like that is equipped with data engineering skill. So every other person is usually, using Excel or writing just SQL. So how do we first solve the problem of ensuring that we all have access to the same data sets? Then we started discussing around open source because the organization is not ready to fully invest into data architecture. So let's work with what we have, a minimal cost and that does not have so many overhead in order to maintain. So we started talking around what open source tool can we leverage that are setting up are easy to implement and we can do whatever it is that we want to do. So what are the sources, the things that we looked at is, of course, it's going to save us costs. I mean, if we have a self-hosted Airbyte, all we need to do is pay for EC2 instant consumption on a monthly basis. If we don't want to use Snowflake for our data warehouse, we can use Postgres for our data warehouse. So we know that at the end of the month, all we are catering for is the EC2 instant consumption cost. So it also gives us full control and customization. So we can pull out things that we don't need. We can ensure that, oh, this is the only part that is working and is working well. And we can also extend what we have with us. It also helps us to ensure that in as much as we want to have all of our data in the central repository, there's also data privacy and security. Someone from arts department or research and development does not have access to information pertaining to the employees that is coming from the HR. Then it also helps us to be free of vendor independence, right? So we are not depending on, if Airflow should lock us in now, there's nothing for us to do. We need to stick with Airflow, right? Or if everybody should decide to lock us in, we can't pull out our data and all of that. So, but the cons also needs to come in, right? How do we do this? For me, I was the only one that is saddled with maintaining all of this and ensuring that the entire pipeline is working, which means that there is that high maintenance burden. But can I also look at how we can scale in terms of complexity? Do we need to start looking at hiring a core data engineer or a DevOps person that can help us to scale in terms of our resources and all of that? Then we know that these are open source, so there is no enterprise support. When there is a problem, the best you can do is look out to the community. And I mean, it's when someone answers you, right? So these are the things that we also consider. Then increase infrastructure complexity as well. Can we start looking at, okay, we don't want to use AWS EC2, we want to use Azure Compute or want to use Google Compute rather to host maybe our Airflow. Then take every other thing to AWS or take every other thing to Azure platform. So these are the things that we looked into, and I did a detailed research on this and present to the stakeholders. So luckily, we get it signed off that okay, let's do this. So now, what is our stack? Basically, is that in as much as we are trying to leverage the open source systems to help the organization drive more data-driven solution, we also need to look at how quickly can we deliver this. Also, what is the complexity in terms of joining one to another. So what we did was we leverage Airbyte. Since Airbyte is UI user interface, you can easily just connect to different data sources and export data from one source to another. So that way, we don't have to be writing Python scripts and ingesting data manually. So what we do is ingest data from every sources directly into our Postgres. Again, the organization does not have money to spare, so we leverage Postgres as our data warehouse. So once the data lands in Postgres, what do we want to do? Now we have more data that is available for anybody to leverage. One of the things that during one of my meetings with the founder was he has already started talking about how they want to introduce AI into what the company is offering. So this sort of gives us the ability to bring in a data science person that can look at our data in its raw form and sort of tell us what it is that we can do with it. So we now have our raw data in a raw schema in Postgres. So how do we now take this raw data and then now create it into a data mart that each unit have already prepared data for them? And next month that I'm presenting, the finance team lead will now tell me, oh, the figure I'm presenting is actually not correct, while it is correct, right? So we leverage DBT because it helps us to also create documentation around our data model. So for any new person that is joining a team, they get to understand what a particular table is about, how it is created, what it is used for, what are the columns that are in it. It helps us to also implement data tests and quality around the kind of information that is going out to our downstream consumers, so they have quality information to sort of consume. Then, in terms of how do we now run this script, so we're looking at two approaches. Should we use GitHub Action as the orchestrator, or should we use Airflow? So, if we use GitHub Action for our orchestration, it means that we'll be missing out on a lot of things, right? DAG dependencies, which DAG keeps failing, basically which Python script keeps failing, why is it failing, what is happening, can we rerun it all over again and all of that, or should we leverage Airflow? So with Airflow, we have more option in terms of troubleshooting. We can see what has happened, why has it happened, where it's happened, when it's happening, and all of these things. So we decided to go around with Airflow. As an Airflow champion myself and also certified in Airflow, I was able to pretty set up Airflow quickly based on our usage and not too much complexity per se. Then, in terms of serving insights, the organization was using Looker, right? But when I got on board, the first thing that the marketing team lead told me was that, oh, the dashboard that was built for them is not is rigid. It's not allowing them to do some sort of explorations that they would have loved to do. So they abandoned. It's not that they are looking to, they abandoned the dashboard. And what they do is they keep asking the same analyst that built the dashboard same question every morning. Oh, how many sign up do you have yesterday? How many people reacted to this thing? How many platform completion do we have? How many people opened this email? Same information that's already available on the dashboard. But because that filtering is not there, they just abandon the whole thing. So now the company again that has a Google Workspace but did not subscribe to Looker. So instead of looking through the headache of how to fuse Looker into the system, we just decided to leverage our Metabase, which means that it can help us to set up a real-time dashboard. We can set up a Slack in Slack such that if there is a spike in maybe one of our metrics that we are measuring, it sends information, whether it's a good spike or it's a bad spike. It sends a notification out to whoever needs to know about such spike. Then after that, we now looked at what are the things that we want to pull in. What are the data that needs to come in, right? So we have the system already. What do we need to load in? So for products, they want to load information from ClickUp. How are their developers, how are tickets closing up faster? How many times in a week are they updating the code base? Who is committing to the code base the most? They handle Shopify product. So what is the bounce rate on a particular product page and all of those things? For the LMS side, how often are people completing courses? Which course or which lesson do people find interesting the most? Which language are people learning the most and all of that? So all of these informations, the product team wants them so that they can improve on each of these aspects of the business. Maybe in terms of time management, in terms of employee management, in terms of redesigning the product page or telling the content creators to help them to refine the descriptions of products and all of that, or maybe to even start looking for a way to tell the marketing team that, hey, this particular lesson is having low interaction. Can we do something to spice it up? Now, for marketing, marketing is basically in charge of YouTube. For every ad that is running, they are redirecting audiences to YouTube. They are redirecting audience to YouTube. We have the Amazon seller partner where we sell ebooks. There is Facebook marketing, there is Google Analytics there is Instagram, and every other thing. So now each business head now started coming out with the information that they actually want to start measuring. Then we have the music producing aspect as well that says, oh, we want to see how the recent songs that we are dropping on Spotify, how are people streaming this particular album, how is it performing, and all of those things. So after gathering what each unit one sort of pulls in, the next thing is let's now start creating the data marts for them. So Airbyte helps us to perform the extraction and loading, and now DBT takes over the transformation part. So instead of writing countless filters in SQL, now we are able to use DBT to create a clean data model such that the only thing that we need to do is probably add another column to the already existing model, and that gives the finance team or maybe the marketing team or even the product team better information and access into what they need. Then, how do we now start doing this? So, if you are using DBT Cloud, it's free for a single developer, right? But the reason why we didn't go with DBT Cloud was because at the end of the day, when when I actually left, right, I want something that they can still manage, not something that is tied to my account or my email that will get disabled and all of that, right? So that's why we went with DBT Core. So how do we now start orchestrating this whole thing, right? The extraction, then after the extraction, how do we orchestrate the transformation? And because Airflow already has like tons of applications of leveraging DBT with Airflow, we just decided to move with Airflow. So we use Airflow to orchestrate the script such that every script runs around 2 a.m. every morning. And then if there is going to be any problem, I will get notified before the resumption of work for the next morning. So that way we are able to tell the marketing that, hey, the data that is currently available on your dashboard is stale. So it's still yesterday's data. Today's data has not been loaded in. We are currently troubleshooting this. Give us about 5 hours or 3 hours, depending on the complexity of the problem. Now, this is an automated message. So it's not like I'm the one reaching out to the team lead. This is an automated message. Hey, the data that you currently have on your dashboard is stale. The engineering team is currently looking into it. This will probably take between 2 to 3 hours. And once done, you'll be notified. So nobody is coming to my DM or pulling me into a meeting to say, hey, we checked our dashboard on Facebook ads, and this is what we are seeing. Then when we check the dashboard that was built in as for us, this is what we are seeing. We have already notified you of the problem that is happening with the data that is getting fed into your dashboard. And last but not the least, how do we now serve this insight? So Metabase also allows us to create specific dashboard per business unit so that a specific unit does not have access to the dashboard of another unit. So that way we have segregation in access, and each business unit can also explore their dashboard. They can also set up the threshold notification that they feel like they should be measuring, right? Now, after all of this, right, we need to now start measuring the impact, okay? So we've spent a whole 3 weeks pulling all of this up, testing and doing QA to ensure that the whole system is running and everything is infused together and can help us to drive our analytics in real time. So how do we now start measuring impact? So before, we use days, there is end of the week report that we usually generate, end of the week, end of the month that we usually generate. Now we don't need to be doing that anymore. because the dashboards are now available, and they're automatically getting populated. So teams members now don't work in silo. Everyone has access to like the same source of data. So if marketing needs information about a particular thing, they have access to look at the information that they need. If it is finance, if it is product, they have information access to all of this information, and they can make informed decisions on how one aspect of the business is affecting the other aspect of the business. And now business team is no longer blinded again. There was a scenario that happened. We had a spike on our YouTube channel. We didn't know where that came from. It was actually a good spike because we had like over 5,000 subscribers in less than 3 hours. And that was surprising. So we started looking into what could have happened, right? Now, we didn't know what happened. This was before we implemented our analytics pipeline. We didn't know what happened. So we had to start reaching out to different people. The marketing team says, oh, they didn't do anything. The social media guy says, oh, no, we didn't do anything. Okay, can we start looking through social media? Maybe someone mentioned the business and all of that. And it took us 3 days before we found out that somebody actually mentioned the business name on BBC, and that was what caused the spike. Now, we didn't know who was the person. All we knew that, oh, someone did mention the business name. Now, I think that we have a system set up in place. We can quickly get this kind of notification and go look at what is happening immediately. Maybe we would have, see who the person was or know what program it was that the business name was mentioned. And we could find a way to sort of replicate that kind of system for every other aspect of the business, right? But we missed out on that opportunity. But right now, the business does not miss out on such opportunity anymore because we now have a system in place that once a certain metrics is above what we have said, we get notified immediately. And even if it is below the metrics that we have set, we also get notified about that. And then the team can quickly swift into action to see how they want to resolve the problem. Now, all in all, basically, if your team is spending more time in collecting data than using it, I think it's time that you automate the whole process. Now, automation does not mean that you leave the whole thing to your programming. It still involves humans. You still need to monitor, you still need to troubleshoot, and you still need to build trust with your downstream stakeholders that are going to be using this system. So build once, orchestrate well, so that people can focus on decisions instead of fighting around, oh, my data is complete, your data is not complete, my value is not that is complete, your value is not complete. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you all.